The canal is one colossal compendium of numbers and facts. Over 70 nations use the canal. It employs over 10,000 people, and it saves the 8,000-mile trip from New York around Cape Horn. And to date, over 1 million ships have made the transit.
Our day in Panama starts very, very early. We meet about 5 in the morning at the Deck 4 gun port. That's where the pilot comes onto our ship. Then once he's on board, we climb down the rope ladder onto his boat and they take us shoreside.
Yeah, we have to be safe.
That's a fun experience for us because as crew members, we never get to see the ship sail away. And now we're on a boat going one direction and the ship is going another direction. It's a pretty fun experience. Once we're shoreside, we have a driver that meets us there, and it's his job to get us between the locks and from one coastline to the other. So once we meet with him, it's pedal to the metal. We go from the Pacific side to the first set of locks, and then he takes us through Panama City to the second set of locks, then it's flat out to the Caribbean side where we get on another boat and back to the ship.
Good morning, Island Princess. It's 7:20 a.m. We're here in Miraflores Locks. We're waiting for the Island Princess to transit through the locks. Can't wait to see your poster. See you guys.
The first time I came here in Panama Canal was in 1962. We came with a small Greek cruise ship, 16,000 tons from New York all the way Caribbean islands, Panama Canal to San Francisco. So for me, at that age, it was an amazing experience. I keep coming there often, of course, to see how it's developing, the progress, and now, of course, they opened the larger lane in Panama Canal.
Many people think the approach from the Pacific side is more interesting than coming in from the Caribbean side, and the reason is the first thing you'll spot is the glistening skyline of Panama City in the distance. That's exciting. Then we come toward the Bridge of Americas. The Bridge of the Americas really marks the entrance for our transit from the Pacific side. It stretches 5,425 feet in length. It's 384 feet above sea level. It was built in 1962 at a cost of $20 million, shelled off by the Americans. Long before any digging began, King Charles V of Spain authorized a survey of the region back in 1534. Too big a job, can't be done. There the dream remained until 1880 when the French secured rights to build a sea-level canal under the direction of Ferdinand de Lesseps. What a great resume he had. He already built the Suez Canal. Who else was applying for the job? But after 20 years of impossible odds and the sheer enormity of the project, the French were forced to give up. Then Americans can throw back their shoulders and say, Yankee know-how took over. Colonel Gorgas removed the deadly yellow fever, and John Stevens was brought in to be the master engineer. And then the dirt began to fly.
Since the 16th century, Núñez de Balboa already came in here. He had this idea of building something in connecting the two sides of the isthmus of the Atlantic to the Pacific. And this has been an idea that has been resilient along history during a long time. And if you consider that the work started in 1881 when technology was very limited, and all the efforts during the French attempt to do the canal and then the American attempt to build the canal, everything in building the canal was difficult. So, and in terms of engineering, the things are still working as they used to be more than 100 years ago. So it's an achievement. It's a marvelous considering that in terms of technology and engineering.
It's exciting to see how a project that was built in 1914 it still works perfectly like a Swiss watch now.
The fact that it's over 102 years old and it still works, still going strong, and they examined the concrete, and the concrete's almost as good as it was when they poured it, and they had no experience in working with concrete back in those days. I don't even know as they experimented that much, and engineers today that deal with concrete wonder the same thing. Why did it work? Well, how come it hasn't crumbled or fallen apart? They didn't even use rebar. They went down to bedrock and they took the rails from the old French railroad, the light rails, and drove those into the bedrock at intervals, and that's what anchored the floor of the locks into the bedrock. That's what's down there, yeah.
Well, when the La Salle was coming, when he came here, he thought he would do a sea level canal like he did in Suez. The difference is in Suez Canal was all dug in sand. It was very easy. But when the American engineers came, especially the Army Corps of Engineers from the US, he saw that the fluctuation between the two coasts, the Caribbean coast, between low and high tide, is a huge difference. On the Caribbean side, the low and high is only 1 to 1.5 foot. On the Pacific side, it can be 20 feet, 30 feet, the difference, the fluctuation between low. So they decided sea level canal was impossible. For the other reason, of course, is because of the continental divide mountains that they have there. That was the most difficult part of the canal. When the French were there for 10 years building, they had about 23,000 people die from malaria and yellow fever, but also premature detonation of the dynamite. The dynamite was just developed at that time, just 3-4 years before they started digging the canal. People do not know how to use dynamite yet. But the 10 years the Americans were building, only about 5,000 people died versus the 23,000 people who died during the French years. So they decided having a lake up to 85 feet above and having the locks that take you up to the lake and then down to the lake on the other side will be the only safe way to do Panama Canal. Panama Canal Authority, that is on the Pacific side, they control all the ship operations. They give the timing for every ship, what time they can go to the locks. That's very important because as we go now, there will be only 2 locks. And if you come from the Caribbean side, there are also 2 locks to choose. So they assign you what lock you're going to be and what time precisely, depending on the traffic. And the ship there has to, we get some pilots, of course, from the beginning of our transit. Usually 2-3 pilots. Used to be 1 pilot and 2 pilots. Now they put us 3 pilots, and the pilots get about $2,000 per transit. So that's a lot of cost of what we pay for the transit on the pilots. But they're supposed to be professional pilots, experienced pilots. They're the ones who control the operation. They give all the kind of directions how to go to the captain, and the captain, of course, relays these directions of the Panama Canal pilot to his staff, to the people on the bridge, and to the engine. The locks work like water elevators. So they go to the first lock and they raise the ship 25 to 29 feet nowadays because the lake is a bit taller. They put more water on the lake. Once the ship is on the same level with the next lake, the second lock, then they open the gates The gates that we see here, they're on V shape. They open like that, and then we can go in and out. The gates are operated by the control tower. In every kind of lock system, there's a control tower with about 10, 12 engineers, they're mechanics, who open the gates and also open the valves for the water to come in or out of the kind of a basin that we are in.
The process by which we move through the canal is ingenious. The electric locomotives you'll see alongside our ship, they're called mules, and linesmen throw out lines to a rowboat down below. Then they're connected to the winches on board these mules. They do not pull us through the canal. They keep us in position and provide braking power.
Everybody thinks that the locomotives, they push or pull us. No, they just maintain us in the center. They are sure that we're not going to hit the walls during our transit. So after we are firmly attached with the steel cables attached to the locomotives, we start using our own engines, we start transiting the canal.
We're not moving very fast, especially when we go through the locks, only about 2 miles per hour. We're using 8 locomotives of mules, 4 on each side. So there will be some operators in locomotives and someone else there too, and they will be escorting us as we go to the locks. And the locomotives are the ones who don't pulling the ship because we go our own power, but they're controlling that they will stay on the central lane so we don't touch the walls. With a ship like this that is so close to the walls, we only have about 2 feet on each side.
The size of this vessel is called the Panama class vessel because it has been built to fit the canal. And if you check it out, the sides of the ship, you have 2 feet of clearance in each side, which is about 60 centimeters in each side of the ship.
They have to be 96 feet wide maximum, and we are 95.5. So we are very close to the maximum size of the original canal. It takes about 45 minutes in every lock. We have a very long ship, almost 950 feet long, so it takes about 20 minutes for the ship to go into the lock. It takes about 15 to 20 minutes for the water to come in or to go out, depending which direction you're going. So it takes about 45 to 50 minutes in every lock. So we have to go 3 locks. On the Pacific side, the 3 locks are divided, 2 Miraflores locks, then there's a small lake, the Miraflores Lake, and then the Pedro Miguel lock. Pedro Miguel was one of the original conquistadors here, who came here with Balboa when they were identifying that there's a Pacific Ocean. So that's why they called Pedro Miguel locks. He was one of the Spanish colonists who lived here in the 1600s. Yeah. The Pedro Miguel is a little bit higher, it's 31, or now it's 34 feet high. The original, the other locks and also the locks of the Atlantic, they're about 28 to 30 feet high. But this is 4 or 5 feet higher than the other locks. The lake, the artificial lake that they have in between the 2 Miraflores and Pedro Miguel, is only about less than a mile long and is in that level with Pedro Miguel locks. The ships that they used to do, they have to go all the way to the tip of South America in the Patagonia and then go around. It takes 35 more days. It takes 35 more days to go from New York to San Francisco instead of going through the Panama Canal. That takes only 14 days, etc. That's the reason, of course, they built the canal to make it faster and less costly for the ships to go to the other side, to the other ocean.
Yeah, we get to have a permission to go through, and we have to pay a fee. Well, every single ship has to pay. For smaller ships, we pay from $800 to $5,000 depending on the size of the boat. In the case of a ship like ours, the fees are a little bit higher. All the fees must be paid 48 hours before we get into the canal. And for a ship like ours, it's about $400,000. But you have some ships that pay more than $1 million to get in. Every single day we have more or less 24 ships crossing the canal every single day. And you can calculate the cost of this because, you know, it's huge. From 6 o'clock in the morning until 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you have a designation that they call northbound when you're going to Atlantic. From 4 to 11, you have southbound going to the Pacific. In the mid-time, you have ships crossing both senses and the small ships that cross in convoys, more or less 5 or 4 ships crossing in convoys.
My favorite part of the transit is right here, right now. The ship is coming in the canal. I can't wait, guys, to see you with your posters and your smiles.
My wife keeps telling all our friends when they ask where to cruise, they say Panama Canal is if you haven't done Panama Canal cruise, you should do it. It's the thing of your lifetime to do one Panama Canal at least. I talk to people here on the ship and they say this is their 4th or 5th time on Panama Canal, so they never get tired. And for me also, it's the 4th or 5th time every season I come here. But the Panama Canal is so exciting because it was some project, engineering project. It was like one of the miracles of the world, of the wonders of the world, the modern world.
It's amazing that the technology is old, but yet we're still using it today. It's still functioning as designed to be. There's no pumps involved, it's all done by gravity, and it really is something to see. Yes, the expansion project is exciting, and yes, it'll be something new to look at and marvel at, but the original canal, the one we're traveling through, is the one we should always remember because it goes back over 100 years and it's still there today.
The history, to be part of history. Every single time that you navigate the canal, you are part of the history that lives permanently here. It's like a feeling that you are with those guys that died here, that gave their lives to make the world a better place to live. If you consider that you would take more or less 8,000 miles going down south to cross the Horn in order to go to the other side, and all the effort that it was put here, all the sweat, all the tears, all the money, all the dreams and hopes of people living and dying here. For me, it's an honor every single time that I come here to cross this canal.